Good morning, everybody. As we start the chitas of the day, and we start a new parsha, the portion of Beshalach. So we are in the book of Shemais, the book of Exodus. We are holding chapter 13, verse number 17. It came to pass when Pari led out the Jewish people, and God didn't lead them to the land of the Philistines. Because it was very near. Because God said, let at least the people, the Jews, will go and get into a war right away, and they'll see a war, and they'll reconsider to return to Egypt. So Rashi says, the word nacham means leinagam, he did not lead them. Kikaravu, because it was easy, as we translated it, was easy to return to Egypt. And Rashi says there are also many agadas regarding this verse, the statement of Kikaravu. For instance, the war of Amalek, as it says later, that the Amaleks came down the mountain. So even though Amalek was something that frightened the Jews and put them into a situation of fear, but they're already in between the mountains, they're already on their journey. But over here, if it would go through a straight way, going through the Philistines would have been easy for them to retreat and run back to Egypt. They will have a second thought on the fact that they left Egypt and think about returning, which we know as the Torah, as in this week's Parsha, the Jewish people even said, let's go back to Egypt. Verse 18. So God led them through the desert. Yamsuf led them by the way of the desert to the Red Sea. And the Jews went out of Mitzrayim armed as they left Egypt. So Rashi said, he led them a roundabout way from a direct route to a roundabout route. Yamsuf, Kumoili Yamsuf, means to the Red Sea. So it headed towards the Red Sea. Chamushim, so Rashi says Chamushim is an interesting word. Chamushim, in the simple translation, means armed. Simply, they were going into the desert, so the Jewish people understood they needed to have weaponry, who they're going to meet in the desert. So he made them go, he made sure that they went armed. Because if they went through civilization, they didn't have to go armed. They would have basically bought, as they went through from place to place, that Rashi says, they would get whatever they need. But if they travel a long distance into a desert, he must prepare them all the necessities for himself. This verse is written to clarify a matter, so that you would not wonder when they went out to war with Amalek and the war with Sichain and Og and Midian. They had many wars in the desert. How did they have a war if they had no weaponry? So they went out of Egypt with weaponry. Another interpretation, Rashi says, Chamushim is divided by 5, meaning that 1 out of 5, only 1/5 of the Jewish nation went out of Mitzrayim. For 4/5 of the nation, only 1 out of 5, 4 out of 5 died in Egypt during the 3 days of darkness. Imagine how many Jews died in Mitzrayim in those 3 days of darkness. Verse 19, because basically they didn't want to go out of Mitzrayim. Verse 19, Moshe took the bones of Yosef. Because he made them vow, made the Jewish people vow. God will remember you. Please take away, carry out my bones. from this place, itchem, with you. So actually, says hashbe, hishbia. It's a double expression. Hishbia, he made made the tribes and the Jewish people of his time make a vow that they would make the children vow. So Rashi says, why didn't Joseph vow his own children to take him out of Egypt? Just like his father made him vow to take him out of Egypt. So why didn't Yosef vow his children? Ama Yosef, so Yosef said, I was this, the vice king of Egypt. But I had the capability to take my father out of Egypt. But my children, the Egyptian was not allowed him to do that. The kachish biyam. That's why he made a vow that when they would go out of Mitzrayim, they would carry his bones out of Mitzrayim. So Rashi says, came, he made his brothers alone make this vow. So from here we learn, it says, itchem, with you. So from here we learn that all the tribes, all the 12 brothers went out of Mitzrayim with them. So they carried the bones. The Jewish people carried the 12 brothers, the 12 tribes. They carried them out of Mitzrayim, and they buried them in Egypt, in Israel. And that's why today you can find the burial places of all the 12 tribes, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, 12 brothers in Eretz Yisrael. Verse 20. And they traveled. It's just interesting that they carried these 12 coffins 40 years in the desert. And even though people were dying in the desert, were being buried in the desert, but these 12 coffins, they traveled with them from place to place to bury them specifically in Eretz Yisrael. Verse 20. They traveled from Sukkot, they encamped in Esam at the edge of the desert. Rashi says, "Vayisum Sukkot," that was on the second day, because on the first day they came from Ramses to Sukkot. Verse 21. Hashem God directed them; it was before them in a pillar of cloud in the daytime, to show them the way. And at night he was a pillar. He had a pillar of fire. To show them the way, it should be a light, so they would travel Yomam Valayla, day and night. Next Rashi, the Rashi is a grammar Rashi, and we will go to the next pasuk. He did not move the pillar of cloud for a day, or the pillar of night by night before the nation. So Rashi says, the Holy One, blessed be He, did not move away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of cloud at night. The verse tells us that the pillar of cloud transmitted its light to the pillar of fire, and the pillar of fire transmitted its light to the pillar of cloud. For while one was not yet set, the other one would rise. It would go one into the other. There was never a time that the Jewish people didn't have in front of them a column of either light, a column of fire, or a column of a pillar, a cloud. Chapter 14, verse number 1. And God spoke to Moshe, saying, tell the Jewish people that they should make a U-turn, and they should go and camp in front of Pi Hachiros. Pi Hachiros is between Migdal Ubein Hayam and the sea. So there was between a mountain, a rock, and a hard place. There was between a mountain and a sea, the Red Sea. In front of this idol Baal Tzvain, they shall encamp opposite by the sea. So that's what happened. Let them turn back to their rear. they approach near to Egypt, and they go back to Egypt during the entire third day. Why would they do that? In order to mislead Pharaoh. So he would say they were astray in the road, because Pharaoh sent spies with them that were informing him what's happening with the Jews. And he said, oh, they're going 3 days, they're traveling 3 days this way, now they're traveling 2 days this way, now the third day they're going back. They're a little bit lost. This is Pisem, one of the cities built by the Jews, and now was called Pi Hachiris. Since the Israelites became free men, B'nei Chayrin, the Chirites are two high, upright rocks. And because there was a valley between them, this is called the mouth of the rocks. Boca Raton, the mouth of the rat. This was the mouth of the rocks. Lefnei Baal Tzafon. So Rashi says, who is Baal Tzafon? Who Nishma Kolam came Mitzrayim? This one was left out of all the deities of Egypt that was not destroyed. And this again was in order to mislead the Egyptians, so they would say the deity is powerful, he's making them come back. He misleads nations and destroys them. That's what Eov said. Verse 3. So Pharaoh, when he heard all about this, so he said about the Jewish people, Nevuchim heim, they are trapped in the desert. Saga le'am bidva, the desert has closed in upon them. So Rashi says, when they heard that they were coming back, he said on the Jewish people, Nevuchim koloyim mishkoyim, they are locked and sunk. They're totally lost. They didn't take directions. They're locked in the desert, for they not know how to get off out of it and where to go. Verse number 4. I'm going to strengthen the heart of Pharaoh. And he's going to run after you. And I will glorify glorify the Jewish people through the Pharaoh of Yodu Mitzrayim, and then Egypt would know, Kani Hashem, that I am God. Vayasu Cain, and the Jewish people did that. They turned back. So Rashi says, with the Holy One, blessed be he wreaks vengeance upon the wicked. His name becomes magnified and glorified. So scriptures say, I will judge against him, and afterwards I will magnify and sanctify myself, and I will be known. So here teaches us that the Eibishter, in essence, with the glory, with Yizgada v'Yiskada, Shemei Rabbi, the aspect of glorifying God's name in the world. Pharaoh was one who initiated the sin. That's why retribution started through him. So Vayasu Chain, this is what they did. Jewish people, this shows you the beauty of the Jewish nation, that they listened to what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Here they were running away from slavery, and Moshe Rabbeinu said to make a U-turn and go back to their oppressor. Wow, shows you in the emunah of the Jewish people, the faith in the Jewish people. Verse number 5. It was reported to the Pharaoh, the people have fled. So the people, not only the Pharaoh, the people said, wait a second, we need the Jews back. What? We let out free slaves. Now suddenly, we have to become slaves. The slaves were complaining. We had slaves. Now we're going to be slaves. So Rashi says, that it was reported to the Pharaoh sent officers with them, he sent spies. And as soon as the 3 days, they had to go set up in the desert and return, had elapsed. The third day, they were supposed to come back, totally back. And the officers saw they were not returning. Maybe they turned back, but they were not traveling. They came to Pharaoh on the 4th day. On the 5th and the 6th day, after Israel departed, they pursued them. That's why on the 5th and 6th day, they pursued them. On the night preceding the 7th, they went down into the sea in the morning of the 7th day. And that's the schedule. So the 7th day The last day of Pesach is Kriyas Yamsuf. They decided the song, and that's the seventh day of Pesach is the day that the Jewish people sang the song of Yashir, which is going to be in this week's Parsha. The Pharaoh suddenly changed his heart from what he had felt previously. He had said, "Get out of here and leave." And now his citizens also changed their heart. For previously they said to him, "How long is it going to be a stumbling block?" Now they changed their heart. And they counted the money they lent them. They gave them money. They're serving us. Why would we leave them go? Verse number 6. Yes, so the Pharaoh harnessed his chariots and he took his people with him. Rashi says he showed his nation who ba'atzma, he himself harnessed his own horse. And he took his people with him. He attracted them with the words, "We suffered, they took our money, and then we let them go. Come with me, and I will not behave with you as do other kings. With other kings, it's customary that the servants precede them in battle. I will precede you." And that's why it says in the Torah soon, it says, and Pharaoh drew near. Because Pharaoh himself drew near and hastened before his armies. And it's customary that other kings takes plunder in the beginning, as much as he, the king, chooses. But I will share equally with you. I will share the booty with you. So Pharaoh enticed the people, even though the people maybe was not so interested. So he took 600 selected chariots, all the other chariots of Egypt, and officers over them. Rashi says, it was the meaning every single chariot in this number was a chosen chariot. And everything that can get. The rest of the chariots. Now, where did the animals come from? Rashi has a problem. Weren't all the animals died? And if you say that they belong to the Israelites, does it not say that your cattle go with us? So whose were they? So Rashi says they belong to those who feared the word of the Lord. The Torah tells us there were those who feared the Lord, those who feared God's word that he was gonna destroy the animals, and they put it in to the barns. From here, Rab Shimon would say, even who is best Egyptians you must kill. Even the best of a serpent, you should crush his head, because ultimately, what do they use their animals? To run after the Jews. Even though they were destroyed, we see that throughout history, even though they're destroyed, but to run after Jews, they'll use whatever they have. Office of legions, as the Targum says. Verse number 8. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and he chased after the children of Israel. But and the children of Israel marched out triumphantly. So Rashi says, what does it mean that hardened the heart of Pharaoh? Because he vacillated about whether to pursue the Israelites or not. So he hardened his heart to pursue them. Yad Rama, what means Yad Rama? With a high hand, with a lofty and openly display of might. And now we go to the Tanya of the day. We are holding chapter 23 in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe now continues according to what we have learned, beautiful teachings of the Tanya, what we have learned in the aspect the way the Eibishter is always connected to the world, that even though God created the world with speech, as the Torah says, with speech as a human being, when he speaks, it's separate from ultimate from him. But God, nothing is separate from him. God is one with everything that he has. Even speech is part of him. So and therefore, Doesn't make a difference before the creation of the world and after the creation of the world. Everything is united with the Eibishter, and everything, that's why everything is ultimately nothing to God, and everything that we have is from God. And nothing can separate from God, and nothing can be separated from Him. So now the Alter Rebbe says, in Kol HaNiskalel, in the light of all that has been said above, we can better Yuvan Hativ, we can better understand we can understand what the Zohar says. The Zohar says the Torah and God is entirely one. The Torah is words. The Torah is written on parchment. The Torah, as we said before, is the Torah uses the words of man. So you might chas v'shalom think that the Torah is separate from God. Comes the Zohar says no, chas v'shalom. The Torah and God is one. You can't separate God from the Torah. And in the Zohar, in Tikkun Zohar, it's written the 248 commandments are the 248 organs of the king. That there's 248 limbs in a human being. There's 248 positive commandments, because the 248 positive commandments are like the body of the king. Kaviyachal. That means that the mitzvah is part of God. The mitzvah is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the God is in the mitzvah. You can't separate the mitzvah from God as you can't separate God from the mitzvah. Why? The mitzvah, same thing as Ratzon Elyon, because every mitzvah in the Torah is the innermost will and is the true desire. Which is clothed in the upper and lower worlds, thereby giving them life, and every mitzvah is God's will. So it's one with God. So can you imagine? Every mitzvah I do, I become one with God. Because every mitzvah is one with God. That's the way I unite with God. Because the whole world, since the Eibishter, God wanted mitzvahs in this world, and He wanted physical mitzvahs in this world. That's why He created the whole world. So that means the whole existence of the world is all that a Yid should do a mitzvah. Is dependent upon performance of the mitzvahs by us, as it's known. Because as it says, the formula of a mitzvah draws God's life and sustenance into all the words. So it comes out, so it follows. The performance and the fulfillment of a mitzvah is the innermost garment of the innermost aspect of God's will. If we would understand that every mitzvah, we are in essence clothing the world with God's will. This performance, the physical act of the mitzvah, that the light and the life of the world issues forth from divine will to be clothed in this mitzvah when we do this mitzvah. And that's why the Zohar says a mitzvah is like a limb. Why does the Zohar give us that word, that it's a limb? What is a limb? A limb is where the soul encloses itself. That's why it's called a limb. My soul comes into my hand, it comes into my head, it comes into my foot, it comes into my stomach, it comes into every part of my body, to 248 limbs of my body. Because they are the garments of my soul, Baruch Hashem. And my body lives through garmenting my soul, to letting my soul, Baruch Hashem, come into every limb of my body. Not only they are close to Him, but Baruch Hashem, my body is bottled to my neshama. And whatever my neshama wants, giving it life, it gives it life. There's no disconnection between my soul and my whole body. And that's why I'm a healthy body, Baruch Hashem. Example, a second, a person desires to stretch out his hand or stretch his foot. The body listens. The body doesn't say, wait a second, why should I stretch my hand out? Why should I move my foot? When a person wants to move his hand, his energy moves his hand. And the Shmoyes will try and take him out. They listen, they obey immediately. Without any command or instruction. Without any delay. The person moves his hand. The second it comes in my ratzon to move my hand, I move my hand. So too, an analogy, just as the organs of the body are completely united with the one soul and it's surrendered to it, thank God, that's a healthy body. If you have a problem moving your hand, there's some kind of disconnection between your brain and your hand, chas v'shalom, you're sick. So when the body functions as a whole, means that everything is lucid and everything goes through and everything is connected, you have a healthy situation. So too, so too, the life force animating and the performance and the fulfillment of a commandment completely surrendered to the divine will. The mitzvah is like the body. As long as I do the mitzvah, it connects to Ratz and the Eibishter, and there's a constant flow between the will of God and this mitzvah. It's like mamish, it comes like the body to the soul. This mitzvah comes like a body to the soul, which is God. Likewise, the external garment of the divine soul of the person fulfilling and participating and practicing the commandments, meaning its faculty of action, which is an external compared to the faculty of speech and thought, since it's function outside of oneself. So action is the lowest level and the most physical thing. But when a person does a mitzvah, he takes his action. He takes the most lowest part of his body, which is external in comparison to his thought and his speech. And he takes the action and he does a mitzvah. He's mevatel. He nullifies his action, his physical side to the godly side. Malavish b'chayish al ma'isa mitzvah. He clothes himself the vitality of the performance of the mitzvah. V'naseh gam king to go could go from that moment. It becomes like a body to a soul in relation to the God's divine will, and it's completely surrendered to the divine will. So this meaning, there's a soul power of action becomes united with divine will in the same way as the one's body is united with his soul. Okay, and therefore, in this way, organs of the human body, which performs the mitzvahs. Now it goes to the physical body himself. I use my hand for tzedakah. I'm going to use my hand in a couple of moments to put on tefillin. When I do this mitzvah tefillin, I put it on my hand. My hand becomes bottled to the tefillin, which the tefillin is bottled, nullified. My hand becomes nullified to the tefillin, became a vessel to the tefillin. And then my head became a place as receptacle for the tefillin. And now that becomes bottled to the tefillin. And my tefillin is bottled to the will of God. So now my body, tefillin, all become garments to God's will. They become a chariot of the divine will. For example, the yad, the hand that gives charity. It's like I said, put on tefillin or lighting Shabbos candles or whatever other mitzvah you might do. But aglayim, or the feet, mitzvah, I use my feet to go walk to a mitzvah. So too, my mouth, we'll learn Torah now. So my mouth has become a garment to words of Torah. We're talking words of Torah. I use on my mind. I'm thinking in the words of Torah. In the fear of God, and in the greatness of God. And therefore we understand what our sages said, a blessed memory. The patriarchs and the matriarchs were like a divine chariot. Why? Because they said Hineni. Whatever God wanted, they said Hineni. How high? Where? Let's go. They had no challenges with God. God said, let's go, they can't. Because the patriarchs, they were totally, but they were totally given over. And detached from mundane matters, they were totally given over to what God wanted them to do. And throughout their lives, they served as a vehicle for nothing but the divine will. And that's why they were like a chariot. Just like a chariot, just mentioned the chariot of Pharaoh, that the chariot does what the rider wants it to do. It doesn't have its own agenda. So too, the patriarchs were a chariot to God in their entire life. But we can also become a chariot to God in a mitzvah that we do. In a mitzvah day, every mitzvah that we do, and every mitzvah is a physical thing. Most all the mitzvahs that we do in the Torah is a physical reality. So by us doing a physical mitzvah, we connect our physical body to the physical mitzvah that we're doing, which just like the mitzvah is the garment of the will of God. Now my hand or my foot or my mouth or my head became a garment to the will of God. And that's the ultimate connection that I can have with the connecting myself and becoming a vessel of godliness in this world. And that completes the Tanya of the day. Today is the 11th day of the month. So the Tillim of the day starts from chapter 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. So 60 to 65. And you will have done the chitas of the day. I wish you all a beautiful, happy, wonderful, healthy day. And the Mitchem, if you want to come again at 10 a.m., we're going to learn Tanya. And we will continue also the chitas. Thank you very much. We'll continue chitas tomorrow at 8 a.m. Have a beautiful, beautiful day and a beautiful week.
You too, Rabbi. Thank you.